We are back and we are live and we are here to talk college football and the playoffs. As usual, I am your host, Bill. With me is D'Lo. Say what up, D'Lo.
Yo, yo.
We're here to talk college football. And man, they were brawling yesterday, and there was some upsets over the last few days in college football. And we're wondering who made it or who's going to make it into the college football playoffs. We still got championship week, D'Lo, but man, yesterday they were brawling, weren't they?
Absolutely, man. It was a wild week, man. Emotions were running high. We've seen brawls on the sidelines. We've seen brawls in the middle of the fields where guys were trying to plant their flags on you know on their rivals' home field and things like that. And they were taking personal to it. Wild day in college football yesterday.
I guess we could start out with probably what is the biggest upset yesterday, and that was Ohio State losing to Michigan. Ohio State had it all set up for them. All they had to do was beat Michigan, and they had a ticket punch to the Big Ten championship game, and their ticket would have been punched to the college football playoff. But yet Michigan upsets Ohio State 13-10, low scoring
Yep.
affair. What did you take away from this game, D'Lo?
I'll tell you what, man. I took away a couple things from it. Number one, Will Howard, I believe is his name, the quarterback for Ohio State.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to have the same swag as their previous two quarterbacks in Justin Fields and C.J. Stroud. So that's one thing that I took. But I also took away that Ryan Day has a major tendency of losing games when they matter. You know what I mean? And so that could end up being his downfall at Ohio State because they expect you to come there and win the big ones.
Why couldn't this happen a week ago when they played the Hoosiers?
Well, that's what I called you and asked you about. I'm like, man, how can Ohio State come out and push around such a strong offense in Indiana last week and then turn around and come out and get dominated by Michigan? And a normal college football fan would say, well, Michigan's got more talent on their squad than Indiana does. They got more blue chip players and things like that. But look at what Michigan has been this year, bro. I mean, they have gotten their asses handed to by Indiana, might I add. You know what I mean? So,
well, and I felt like this win by Michigan made the win by Indiana over Michigan that much more important because Michigan came out and put it to Ohio State. And the brawl that happened after this game, when Michigan tried to plant the flag at the O in the center of the field, Ohio State wasn't having it. And next thing you know, all out mollywopping happened. Next thing you know, players were getting sprayed with mace.
Yeah.
And it was just insane. Now, do you believe that there will be punishment handed down, and some of these guys will be playing in the Big Ten championship or in the playoffs? What do you think, D'Lo?
Well, neither of these teams are going to be in the Big Ten championship because
you're right.
Because with Ohio State's loss, it secured Penn State's position in the Big Ten championship against Oregon. But this could have major implications, man. I mean, when you're throwing punches on the field after a game and it turns into a full melee, and then you got cops on the field spraying the opposing players with mace and things like that. These guys were on the sidelines and in the tunnels puking, trying to flush their eyes with water. The NCAA has already opened an investigation into Ohio State. And don't get me wrong, when you hire these cops to come in and work security for your event, you have no control over how they react to a situation.
I didn't
but
see
at the same
Ohio State person getting maced or flushing their eyes out.
Absolutely. No, I agree. You know, it was definitely biased against the visiting team for sure. But like I told you, man, you know, I'm all for fan celebrations. I'm all for you know, when you leave the stadium, if you want to go flip some cars over or climb some fucking poles or you know what I'm saying, or feed a diabetic horse a honey bun, and you know what I'm saying, like whatever you decide to do after you leave the venue is on you to celebrate. But I am totally against the shit of planting a flag in the middle of a made, you know, an opposing stadium's or opposing university stadium. I'm totally against. You know, if a big upset happens in college basketball, I hate that they rush the court. I just feel like there's too much. Dude, you ain't gonna tell me that there's a single game where a dad doesn't bring his kids to that game or something like that. And what happens, man?
But how
What
I felt
happens if
about it was
a
opposite.
kid gets trampled in the middle of these people rushing the court and shit? I
Well,
understand the celebration, dude. Like I do, I get it, man. But I just think there's better ways to go about it to where you don't have to be so destructive and not to mention very disrespectful to, like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like that kind of runs to the coach and the program itself, like the discipline of, man, yeah, we just came in here and upset this team, but we're at least going to show the respect. We're going to stay on the field and celebrate, but planting that flag in the middle of somebody's stadium that is full of 100,000 of their fans, and Ohio State has such a proud tradition. It's just like, man, you're asking for shit to crack off, dude. You know what I mean? Like
what you're
you've
talking
seen
about
it.
is kind
Go
of two
ahead.
different things, though, because you were talking about, like, one would have been had it been at Michigan, and Michigan would have won over them, and the fans rushing the field because they just knocked out the number 2 team in the country. That's one thing
Yeah.
compared to what we saw yesterday. What we saw yesterday was visiting teams upsetting these teams or getting the win in the opposite team's house and then celebrating. And I understand what you're saying, but even though it was funny that you said if you want to go outside and flip some cars, light some trash cans on fire, that's one thing. But the way I felt it was if you don't want this to happen, win the game at home. Second of all, Ohio State lost. They should have been off the field, back in the tunnel. Most of their fans had left the building in disgust anyway. I do see that you are right that it is disrespectful planting the field on the middle, but most of them wouldn't have saw it if their asses were back into the tunnel. It was Michigan's time to celebrate. They did beat Ohio State, who was number 2 in the country. I got mixed reviews on it. You know what I'm saying? This doesn't happen in certain spots. Like you didn't see Notre Dame beating the shit out of Northern Illinois players after their game, but they also didn't disrespect the holy field that is Notre Dame after they beat them.
That's wrong. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that speaks to the discipline of the program, man. Like
Of both
when,
programs, it talked about the
yeah,
discipline
of both programs,
Northern Illinois going
absolutely.
in there getting a big win in South Bend, which is a holy place for football, but also Notre Dame being like, we lost to I don't know if Northern Illinois is a IAA school or if they're just like a mid. What are they?
They're Division 2 or whatever that is, IAA. Yeah, they're right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, FCS. So it's one of those things where they appreciated the win. Like it meant something to them. They weren't going to go out there and disrespect it. And Notre Dame didn't have to. Not that I believe Notre Dame would have. Their players would have fought like that.
And here's the thing, man. Like, in that moment, I am all for, you know, the players and the coaches being out on whatever field they're on, celebrating, man. Like hugging each other, you know, running down, trying to fucking give their mom a hug in the fan or in the stands. things like that. Dude, that's awesome. Like, you deserve that. But when you go and you grab a 15, 18, 20-foot flag from your color guard and you rush back out to the middle of the field to plant that flag right on the O. You've seen it back in the day when Terrell Owens tried to do that shit. What was it, on the Eagles field? I believe it was. It was on somebody.
Oh yeah, that I always go back to the big incident with Dallas and 49ers when they tried to plant the flag. The 49ers tried to plant the flag at the star. And
yeah, well, do you not remember the point when Terrell Owens tried to go out in the middle of I think he was with the Niners, and he was playing Dallas, and he went out there and he tried to like do his celebration out in the middle of the star, and one of the linebackers came out and blasted his ass, dude. Like,
and then it's just 2 years later, he's on the side, he's on the in the back talking about my quarterback.
Yeah, that's my quarterback. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things, man. I mean, you got to protect your house. It's as simple as that. You did lose the game, but we're taught from the moment that we're kids all the way up to the pros. You're supposed to win with class, and you're supposed to lose with class. You know what I mean? Like,
I say there should be fine. These grown men want paid for playing college football, then they should have to pay up these fines. I don't care if it's a
I agree. I agree, man. I agree.
They fucking rumbled on the field in multiple games yesterday because of these.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. So we just kind of covered the Ohio State Michigan one, but there's several other ones to cover here. You know what I mean? So,
Arizona State. It happened. North Carolina. I want to say North Carolina State, maybe.
Now, did you see the details leading up to those ones? Were those the same type of situation where they were? I
do believe that the Arizona State game was the same, where they tried to plant the flag, and all hell broke loose. So it is. It's something big, but we'll move on from the fighting some, because, man, there was also another upset yesterday, D'Lo, as number 6 Miami lost to Syracuse, and that dropped Miami down to 10-2 on the season, 6-2, but it moved Syracuse up to 9-3, 5-3 in the ACC, and that loss pretty much. I don't know. We're waiting to see if Miami is still gonna. I think Miami's still gonna play in the ACC championship, but man, that's a loss. Even though Syracuse was on the rise, it still is a bad loss. It might have knocked Miami out of it and moved Clemson into it. Yes, it did. I'm reading it now. Syracuse knocks Miami out of the ACC title game with stunning victory. So Miami taking a hard loss to Syracuse, a team that did end up pulling out a victory, but it took 8 overtimes, and that was Georgia versus Georgia Tech. What'd you think about that game from Friday night?
Oh, man. I mean, that could still, even though Georgia ended up winning that, it took 8 overtimes, and that could have implications, man. Like, they could everybody. The SEC is not the power that they once were. Right this year, they are way down. So, but I mean, they're still kind of getting carried because they brought in great teams from what was it, the Big 12 or the Pac-12 or whatever.
The Pac-12.
I thought the Pac-12 was the West Coast one, and the Big 12 was the one that Texas and Oklahoma were in.
It is. They brought it in.
They brought in Texas.
Oh no, you're talking about the SEC. I'm talking about the ACC. Yeah, you're right. They brought in 2 powerhouses in Oklahoma and Texas to the ACC.
Yeah. Yep. And so, And so you know what I mean. You still, even though your major powers of the conference are down this year, you still got big dogs that are new to the conference coming in and carrying the SEC this year.
Well,
So,
here's a
but the
thing
ACC.
because
That, go ahead.
Georgia did beat Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was
Mhm.
7-5. Ends the regular season at 7-5, and Georgia drops down now to 10-2. In what they didn't drop down; they finished the season at 10-2. I believe Georgia will play in the or in the SEC title game, but Georgia was ranked 7th, and they were taking on a team that Notre Dame had beat the crap out of. Notre Dame beat the crap out of Georgia Tech, and yet Georgia here struggles and needs 8 overtimes to get a 44-42 victory. Do you see Georgia falling from that 7th spot that they've sat in?
Man, I'll tell you, I mean, like I said, it could have a little bit of implications. They could fall to, man, I just don't see somebody like an Indiana surpassing them, is my thing. Like, and with teams that did lose this week, such as a Miami, things like that, Georgia will probably stay right where they're at, or they may even end up moving up because of other teams losing.
Really? Well, if they do play in the and I believe that they will play Texas in the SEC title game, so they're going to have another game. But a loss to Texas would move Georgia to 10-3 on the season, and you wonder, do they still get into the
No, I
playoff?
hate that, dude. I hate that. I don't want a 3-loss team in the playoff. I don't feel like Alabama deserves it. And if Georgia ends up becoming a 3-loss team, I don't feel like they deserve it, man. I don't want a 3-loss team in the playoff.
I agree 100%. You want the best of the best, but man, a 3-loss team, you lost to 3 teams. It's hard to justify putting you in that spot. Some of the most notable games from yesterday: Oregon winning 49-21. They got their spot in the Big Ten championship game, which we now know they will play Penn State. Penn State yesterday demolished Maryland 44-7. I look for Penn State this week in the rankings and the college football playoff rankings. I look for them to move up to probably 3rd. They're 4th right now. I look for Texas, who won 17-7 over Texas A&M, who was ranked 20th. I see Texas moving into the number 2 spot. I see Penn State moving into that 3rd spot. Notre Dame, who picked up a 49-35 victory over USC. And for anybody that wants to say, well, that was a kind of a close game, that was a 2-touchdown win. And Notre Dame and USC, they always play tough. But I see Notre Dame moving into that 4th spot, 1 spot up from 5. Of course, Miami's going to drop out, who lost that game. Tennessee won 36-23 over Vanderbilt. That's my question is it, we'll have to wait and see what the final rankings are, but I don't know if it's going to be Georgia. Will it be Tennessee that plays in the SEC title game? That's something that we're going to have to wait and see. SMU.
Georgia, that's what we talked about last night, man. I mean, Tennessee's played strong this year, man, and they've actually scored more points than Georgia this year. Things like that. So where does Tennessee sit amongst the rankings right now?
They sit at 8th, while Georgia sits at 7th. Tennessee came out and got what was it? It was a 13-point win over Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt had beat Alabama, had upset some teams this year. They still finished the season at 6-6, but by all accounts, this was one of the better seasons Vanderbilt football has had in a long, long time. So let me see whose Tennessee losses are to determine where they sit at in the SEC. They lost to Arkansas. They lost. Oh, there it is, right there. They lost to Georgia just 3 weeks ago. So it will be Georgia playing Texas for the SEC championship. With Georgia having that win over them, that puts Georgia into the SEC title game. So Tennessee sits back and awaits their fate. If the college football playoffs will put them in, I firmly believe that they will.
Yeah.
They finished with how many losses did they have? They finished at 10-2, so
I
they
think
don't have that
2.
3-loss mark where we're like, you have the 3
Yeah.
losses, you shouldn't be playing in it. So I do think Tennessee will make the playoffs. We haven't talked about this yet. We'll go ahead and talk about it. IU coming out yesterday, and they had to make a statement game after losing to Ohio State in the week before. Everything was riding on that game. Indiana had a chance to play in the Big Ten championship in Indianapolis. That was like a dream that could have came true, but that one loss on their record this year, Ohio State, doomed that for them. Even though Ohio State ended up losing yesterday because of how they're ranked and opponents that they have played in the top 25, Penn State moves past Indiana to play in the Big Ten championship game. But the Hoosiers with a 66-0 win over Purdue. We talked about this last night. Purdue's only win of the season was against FCS Indiana State, our home team right here. That was their only win. They beat them 49-0. So Purdue having a horrible, horrible football season this year, and it was capped off in the old Oaken Bucket game where Indiana just came out. But they made a statement. They made a statement to the playoffs saying we deserve to be there. IU finishes 11-1, 8-1 in the Big Ten, and I firmly believe that they will move up to at least 8th in the rankings, and they will make the playoffs. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think that they're going to get in, but it's just one of those deals with. I said it, last week when we made a video about who we thought might get in. It's going to raise the question about this shit with like the SMU and the IUs and the just the smaller programs that don't get the national attention and don't get these 5-star recruits and shit like that. IU's never been known as a football program, man,
No.
and they've always been known for their basketball, and so it's just gonna raise the question. I promise you, in this playoff, do the smaller guys belong? You know what I'm saying?
Well, as you brought up SMU yesterday got a 38-6 win over California, moving SMU to 11-1 on the season, 8-0 in the ACC. They will be playing. Did we determine who they would be playing in the ACC? Let me see real quick.
No, we never. No, we kind of. You were shooting the Miami thing back and forth. I think it's between Miami and Clemson, and I don't know what Clemson's losses are or whatever.
Well,
but
Clemson lost yesterday. Clemson lost a close game. I think it was 14-12 to South Carolina in their big rivalry game. Clemson drops it. Clemson was 12th. South Carolina was 15th. And so they lost a close game there. When I pulled up the ACC standings right now, SMU is at top at 11-1, 8-0 in the conference, and they will play Clemson, who finished 9-3, but 7-1 in the conference, one better than Miami. Miami was in the conference.
So that raises the question now: do you think that Miami gets in, or do you think they get bumped?
I do, because of the other losses compounding in there. I do think that Miami ends up getting in with the 10-2 record. The only shocker here, the only way that might not happen is if Clemson upsets SMU in the ACC championship game. Then you're going to have a Clemson team that has 3 losses in the college playoff with a bye. Well, possibly, yeah, with a bye. So I mean,
I think this this 12-team playoff thing, what it's gonna do is it's gonna open the door for teams like a Indiana and and SMU to catch lightning in a bottle and have a great season. But you gotta worry about, is that sustainable? Like, can they like we just talked about it yesterday. You said, will they ever be able to match this, man? You know what I mean?
If this was a year ago, think about this. If this was a year ago, what 4 teams would have got in? Because a year ago, only 4 teams got in. So you're looking at like an Oregon getting in, a Texas, maybe a Notre Dame, and then a Penn State. Like, that's what you would be looking at. IU, even with the phenomenal season that they just had, going 11-1, would not have gotten into the playoffs. A lot of these teams wouldn't have. Like I said, I I can guarantee you that the 4 teams would have been Penn State, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame in it. So this year, and we needed 12 teams. 4 wasn't enough. So, but it's interesting here because as we're sitting here talking about this with that ACC championship game, I fully expect SMU to win it. But if something happens and Clemson beats them, Clemson gets in with a 10-3 record. They would get in, and then you're like, does SMU get in? Does Miami get in? Like, would there be 3 teams from the ACC possibly getting in? And if you're putting 3 teams from the ACC, unfortunately for the SEC, they're taking a spot away from them.
Yeah,
no, which I'm absolutely all for. I'm all for the SEC not having that many teams. Their run in college football as the dominant conference really took a hit this year, and I'm all for that. And, so
yeah, I think most of the country. I mean, you know, you got your diehard SEC fans out there, diehard Alabama, diehard Georgia, shit like that. But I mean, I think that a lot of the college football world are ready to see a change and see some new faces up there. But like I said, I just worry that for some of these programs, it's not sustainable, and it's not.
I believe
you know, like I said, they caught lightning in a bottle, you know, this year, but come next year, SMU and IU and all this, they're gonna fall like dramatically. It's not just gonna be a 1 or 2 game fall. They're gonna hit a wall next year, and it's just because, you know, you look at Indiana, a lot of their performing stars this year were transfer portal seniors and shit like that, and they're going to be gone next year. So
that might be something though that Cignetti at IU does, where he pulls these guys that play for only a year. You know what I'm saying? And it's constantly, unlike before where you had these guys usually 3 to 4 years, always. This could be where you see a rotating roster every year because teams are going to be going out, and I call them free agencies in college football. Now that's what it's going to be. These college transfers, that is the free agency where they're pulling these players, and you're going to see players. Some players might play 4 different teams, four different teams in their college career because they're going with the school that's going to pay them the most money. So
what are you telling me, that Cignetti could end up being the Bruce Calipari of college football?
He could be. You know what I'm saying? But in the end,
you know how his career's played out. Yeah. You know, he down there in Kentucky, he was one and dones all day long. You know what I mean? So,
but he could be the wizard of pulling the best players that go under the radar, like with Curtis O'Rourke. You know what I'm saying? Finding guys like this and filling them in for one season. And if that's enough to keep you around 9-3 to 11-1 every season, and you're competing with the best in the Big Ten, how could you go against that? I mean, in all honesty. So we'll see what other what other games there was yesterday that we didn't cover already. Throw them out there in the rankings. Like I said, it was South Carolina picking up a 17-14 win over Clemson. That put South Carolina at 9-3 on the season. I do not see them getting into the tournament. They might move up to a couple of spots, but the whole thing, like we've talked about this before, they could move up to the 13th or even the 12th spot. But those schools like Arizona State, who are going to be playing in the Big 12 championship game and probably going to win it, they're going to get that spot, and they're not even ranked in the top 12. So, which in bringing up, Alabama won 28-14 over Auburn in the Iron Bowl, the game that they play every year like that. I don't think it was enough. Yeah, Alabama is 13th. I don't see them moving up in the rankings enough. I don't see Alabama making the playoff. I just don't. Arizona State, 49-7 over Arizona. This was another game where they brawled afterwards because it was at Arizona. We're talking about Arizona State, Arizona, and Arizona State tried to plant the flag at the Arizona center of their field, and they weren't having it after just getting beat down on. So, little difference in the Ohio State from this. Ohio State was in the game till the very end. Emotions are charged. In this game, it was Arizona already took an ass whooping, and they were going to be damned if after getting their ass whipped in a football game that they were going to watch this team disrespect them on their field and was like, we're gonna brawl then. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They weren't ever in this game, but they weren't going to let themselves.
It's a pride thing, man. I mean, like I said, you just took an ass whipping, so you're already pissed off and not happy and shit. But things happen, and you take your loss and you pick yourself up and you carry on. But to think, these motherfuckers just came into your house and stomped your ass, and then they're gonna try to plant their flag in the middle of your dude, I'm not gonna let that happen, dude. I'm telling you right now, I'm not gonna let that happen.
This is one that we've covered. We've been following. Not that we're Big 12 like major fans or anything, but we've been wondering because for most of the season, BYU was running the Big 12. Then they dropped 2 straight games, and now you have an instance where you have 3 teams that are all 10-2, 7-2 in the Big 12, but only 2 can play for the championship. And so it's Arizona State, BYU, and Iowa State. So I'm looking at Iowa State to see who their losses were to. Well, they already have them marked down. They have it being they have Arizona State playing Iowa State for the Big 12 championship. So BYU will not be playing for the Big 12 championship. I was wondering about that, but the reason why they lost to Arizona State, BYU did, and so Arizona State gets that over them. I'm going to see who Arizona State's losses were to. They lost to Texas Tech. They lost to Cincinnati. So, but they already have it marked down here on ESPN.com that it will be Iowa State playing Arizona State for the Big 12 championship. And the winner of this, it's big because the winner of this receives a playoff bid and possibly a first-round bye. What do you think about Arizona State and Iowa State for the Big 12 championship?
I mean, I expected Arizona State to be there. Iowa State's, of course, a little bit of a shocker. I did not expect BYU to have such a fall from grace, but
BYU had locked up. What 3 weeks ago? We were all like they were undefeated, and we were like they're going to get a spot at the table. That table was the rug was pulled out from underneath the table on BYU.
Yeah,
BYU does not even get into the playoffs now, in my opinion.
And yeah, I mean them or Colorado, man.
No,
You
and
know,
that was
everybody.
teams that we were talking about 3 weeks ago that it was going to be one of those two teams.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, everybody's riding that Colorado hype train and shit, but I'm still like, man, and that's my thing is like, you know, you're getting ready to give Travis Hunter the. You told me yesterday you thought Travis Hunter probably secured the Heisman.
I did.
And the quarterback that I kept trying to talk about,
From
that's
Miami?
probably also what's that?
Is it the quarterback from Miami?
Yeah, the dude that I kept thinking, trying to think that he's going to possibly go high in the draft as well. It's Cam Ward, isn't it?
Yes. And he is.
Yeah.
They've talked about the Heisman front runner, and they've talked about Cam Ward. They've talked about Sanders from
Fedor
Colorado,
Sanders. Yeah.
and Hunter from there. So I mean, but in the beginning of the season, everybody was talking about Quinn Ewers, and that he was like the odds-on favorite of being not only the Heisman Trophy winner, but also being the number one pick in the NFL draft later next year. And that has completely disappeared. Both of them. They're not talking about Quinn Ewers as the Heisman winner or as the number one pick. They're not even talking about him being one of the top 5 quarterbacks right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, he went down with an injury. Arch Manning got a few starts this year, and it took Quinn Ewers a little bit to get back up to speed when he came back and shit. But I mean, he to me, he's still one of the top pro prospects in college football, and he also has the benefit of his team having some of the most playoff experience in college football. They've Texas was in it, I believe, last year as well. So they didn't end up winning it.
No, it was Michigan.
Who was it? Yeah, Michigan won the national championship last year, but they were in the 4-team hunt or whatever it was last year. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's one of those things.
To round out yesterday, Iowa State punching their ticket to the Big 12 game, won 29-21 over Kansas State. BYU rebounding after some horrible weeks there, beat Houston 30-18. BYU sitting at that 19th spot. Missouri,
I don't know if you remember, but just a couple of years ago, Houston was knocking on the door of like a top 10 team and shit. And so it's like, dude, teams like that can strike that lightning in a bottle for a season, man. But
who was that they just can't. Like, do you remember that other school, the Raging Cajuns of like it was like Louisiana Tech,
Louisiana State? It's either Tech or State.
No, because Louisiana State is
LSU. Yeah. So it's Louisiana Tech. Yep, you're right.
And they were knocking on the door along with another smaller school, Buffalo. I remember Buffalo was, and we're talking about within like the last 5 years, but
and I feel like they should do some evaluation, and they should figure out some of these schools that are having a hard time competing with these Division I schools, and do some realignment, man. Like, because there's schools in FCS that are good, dude. I mean, like, what is it, South Dakota State or something? They what's the is that Division III?
South Dakota State, what's it called? The Bisons of Montana. These are some schools that are definitely the Austin Pays. These are some of those schools that down there they demolish. I mean, they demolish other teams. And it just so happens that Indiana State, our local school here, plays in the Missouri Valley Conference in the FCS. They are the number one. They last year and I believe this year they put out 6 schools into the playoffs. They put in 32 teams in the FCS playoffs, and 6 of them were coming from Indiana State's division of the Missouri Valley. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying, man. Like, and Indiana
It was
State
James
can't have.
Madison. James Madison was one of those, and they moved up to Division One
They moved up.
last year.
Absolutely. Yep. And see, I think they should keep doing that. I think they should be looking at the North Dakotas and the South Dakotas and seeing how they're dominating these smaller
Now,
schools, these
now hold on.
SCS.
What you just said,
What's that?
because what you just said was the North Dakotas and the South Dakotas. Those teams are also good too. And when I say that, I'm talking about in the Missouri Valley, you have South Dakota State and South Dakota and North Dakota State and North Dakota. All four of those schools in the FCS are dominant.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those schools moving up to Division One, and some of these.
What I'm saying was that you said the North Dakota South. What I'm saying is not only is there a South Dakota State, but there's a South Dakota University that is good.
I see.
In that.
I see.
And so I'll bring it up here in a minute. I'm going to bring up the FCS poll, and I'm going to read some of the top teams off in that. Real quick, I just wanted to say to you, I wanted your opinion on this. There's five conferences with the Pac-12 out. The Mountain West kind of took that spot. A lot of these teams in the Mountain West are going to be moving to the Pac-12 in the rebuilt Pac-12 next year, like the Boise States, UNLV, Colorado States. They're going to be moving up. What I just wanted to say real quick was in the Mountain West championship game this year, Boise State, who finished 11-1, 7-0 in the regular season, will be playing UNLV, who finished 10-2, 6-1 in the Mountain West. And one of these teams right here are going to get an automatic bid to the playoffs. And the way that this works, D'Lo, is there's 5 conferences. The 4 conference championships that finish with the highest ranking get a bye. So Boise State, if they finish with if let's say Boise State wins it, it's Boise State versus UNLV. If Boise State wins it, they are currently ranked 11. So if they win it and they're better, they're ranked better than the Big 12, they get the bye, and the Big 12 winner, which would be between Iowa State and Arizona State, they would get a bid, but they wouldn't get a bye. You understand what I'm saying?
I got you. Yep.
So, but real quick, while we're on this subject, I'll go and look at the rankings for the FCS, because I want to name off some of these schools, because you're talking about like realignment, bringing some of these up. I want to let you know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, dude, okay. It's hard though, man, because you start getting into dicey waters, because it's like, look at Purdue, man. They won one game this year, and they're in the Big Ten. It's obvious that they do not belong in the Big Ten. So they might still be a Division I school, but they need to go somewhere. Maybe
these schools are in the Big Ten, not just in football, but in basketball.
But sports across. I understand that, man. But
you remove Purdue from football from that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, what about the
basketball? You don't have to, though, dude. I mean, you don't have to, because fucking look at Notre Dame, man. They're independent in football, but their other programs are in the ACC or the Big East or something?
No, ACC. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, here's some of the teams. This is the after this weekend's games. These are some of the top teams in the FCS, man. Number 1 in the polls is Montana State. They finished 12-0. Number 2 is a Missouri Valley team, South Dakota State. All right, they finished 10-2. Underneath them is South Dakota University. They finished 9-2. They're 3rd. Underneath them at 4th, North Dakota State at 10-2. And then I'm trying to see if North Dakota is ranked. North Dakota University, if it's ranked in this, and they are not. Though normally they are, because I mean they're so damn dominant. But some of the other teams that we've talked about or that are dominant in that are UC Davis, Incarnate Ward, which we talked about that the other day because it's such a weird name. Richmond, Idaho, Mercer, another team from the Missouri Valley, Illinois State, the Villanova, Rhode Island, Montana, Jackson State, which is where Dion came from,
Uh,
right?
Dion, yeah, he was and it's a HBC, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Along with like a
I
South
think that,
Carolina State who's on this.
yeah,
That is,
I believe Jackson State was that Jerry Rice's alma mater? It was somebody's alma mater that was great, that ended up being great. So,
I have to look that up. But rounding it out, in there is also another Missouri Valley, which would give them, I think, 5 in the rankings. Missouri State. They're ranked 21 in their polls. But those are some of those
so
dominant.
tell me what you think about this. Okay, you take maybe the worst one or two Division One schools coming up this week, championship. Well, the thing is FCS doing the same thing right now? Are they on championship week and all that?
They don't have. They don't have a championship week. They just finished their 12-game season, and now they will pick the top 32 teams for their college playoff, which they've been doing for years now. So they don't have.
Well, after their season ends or something, after they play their championship game or whatever it is, the FCS championship game, I think they should take like the top 2 teams or top maybe even one team and put them up against like statistically the bottom fucking Division One school and just see where they stack up, man, and think like, all right, maybe it's time to move this team up and move this team down or something. You know what I mean? Like,
You're
I don't
talking
know. It
about the
just
pyramid system that soccer has, like over in Europe and everywhere else, where like I can't remember the name of their soccer thing that they have over there, but there's a name for the Premier League. The Premier League
remember.
is
Yeah.
like the top of the pyramid, all right? And then you have these like top echelon soccer teams, but they're not up in the Premier League. They're below it. And then below them is so many. And the reason that I know about this is because I was watching a show called Welcome to Wrexham, where
Oh boy bought a team or whatever.
everybody says, oh boy, it's Ryan Reynolds and the guy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, um, Glenn McHugh or something like that. They bought
Yeah.
the Wrexham's soccer team over there, and they were like at the bottom of the pyramid. Over there, if you win your league championship, then you get to move up to the next spot on the pyramid, and the worst team above you drops down into the next one. So
Why would that be a problem? Why would that be a problem in NCAA, bro? They're all college football. Why would conference realigning? It's because in college football, the conferences want the teams that are willing to contribute the most amounts of money, dude, or bring in the most amounts of money. And so, you know, even though a Montana State or a South Dakota State or one of them is head and shoulders above a fucking, I don't know. I'm just trying to throw something out there, a San Jose State or so, you know what I mean? Like head and shoulders above them. If they're not bringing in the kind of revenue that San Jose State is, then they're going to continue to keep them in as a Division One school, man.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it is. I was going to look at the All-State playoff predictor and see if they put out a new thing for that. We looked at it last week, and so I just wanted to see. This was updated today. I did not realize that today was December 1st. So this was updated today, and the team with the highest chance, and there's several of them, of getting into the playoffs right now, Notre Dame, 99%. They're getting in.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon, 99%. They're getting in. Texas, 99%. They're getting in. Penn State, 99%. Georgia, 99%. IU, 99%. Texas, 90, or Tennessee, 98%. Ohio State, 96%. And then it starts to drop down after those 8 teams. You got MSU, 69%. Boise State, 68. Iowa State, they are favoring Iowa State over Arizona State, 55% to 43%. And then Clemson with a 42% chance, Alabama 30%, UNLV 28%, Miami dropping significantly 24%, South Carolina 21%, BYU 15%, Army at 9%, Ole Miss at 3%. And then funny that we just brought them up, the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana, a 2% chance at making it.
Yeah.
I just thought that was extremely funny. But according to them, the 12 teams getting in, you're talking about Iowa State and Arizona State, Boise, SMU, Ohio State, Tennessee, Indiana, Georgia, Penn State, Texas, Oregon, and Notre Dame. So only 3 teams then, according to this, would get in from the SEC, while you have 2 teams from the Big 12. You have 1 team from the Mountain West, 1 team from the ACC, and then 4 teams from the Big 10 and independent Notre Dame.
So it's only got 1 team from the ACC getting in.
Yes, SMU.
Damn.
So they have Miami falling back significantly.
They're predicting Miami falls and Clemson. They're predicting Clemson's going to fall.
Clemson is the odd man out. According to this right now, you have your 12 teams getting in, and then the next team that would just miss out is Clemson at the 13th spot.
Yep.
So very, college football, it's heating up, and only thing that we have left now is championship week, which is this coming up week, which when you look at it, there's only 5 championships that matter. And that is the Big 10, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Mountain West. Any other one, it doesn't matter. So those 5 games next week are going to determine for some teams who gets in and who doesn't.
Since a large portion of the top teams in the Mountain West are leaving next year, are they getting absorbed, or are they going to try to rebuild
they're going to rebuild and just take teams from these other conferences? But out in the Mountain West, why wouldn't you add
the problem,
the South Dakota States, the South Dakotas?
Well, if they were willing to do that, then that's one thing. But South Dakota and South Dakota State would have to come in and still compete. The problem that I'm having is if Boise State and teams like that, the top teams of the Mountain West Conference are leaving next year, why do they still get an automatic bid, man? That's my thing, is like, you don't want a team to end up in there that's fucking 500 or 2 games above 500, but yet they won the Mountain West, and so they got an automatic bid.
Look, who's the top team in the Mountain West?
It's Boise State.
Yeah, they're 11-1.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying, you just told me that they're leaving next year to go to the Pac-12.
Yes, and once again, though, what have we always stated that this is? What do they always call it? The Power 5. So who's not going to be a Power 5 conference next year? The Mountain West.
Yeah.
And it will be the Pac-12. So who will no longer get an automatic invite to the playoffs? The Mountain West.
See, that's what I was wondering, if they would take it away.
Yeah, they're going to give it to the Pac-12.
I mean, they probably should. You know what I mean? But is that an ever-changing thing? So if South Dakota State and Montana State came into the Mountain West and they fucking started dominating, or they had a 11-1 or a 12-0 season or a 10-2 season, and they've been steadily in the top 15 all year, and they do that a couple years in a row, is that an ever-changing thing? Do you give them back their automatic bid?
Well, maybe I'm wrong on what I was saying there, because the way it is now is It's the conference champion that's the highest ranked. So next year, if the Mountain West has a team that is undefeated and is ranked in the top 8, and the Pac-12 doesn't, then I would think that the Mountain West would get that spot over the Pac-12. I don't think that it's like, okay, you're guaranteed from the Big Ten. If the Big Ten was god awful this year and their best team was 8-4, you know what I'm saying? They wouldn't probably get the automatic bye. You know what I'm saying?
I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So it is a changing, a changing system. Yeah. So
all you got to do is win, be dominant, and be ranked, and you can pass up some of these other ones. But the problem that we see is that the SEC has devoured each other this year, and yet they're still
but I think
ranked.
I think with that being said, that explains to me a little more why they're so reluctant for. Because back in the day, dude, when somebody would lose, I remember seeing people be ranked 6th or 7th, and when they would lose, they would drop all the way down to 15th, 16th. You know what I'm saying? But this year, it seems like Indiana got hit 5 spots, and that felt a little harsh. But other teams, it's like they've only dropped a couple spots in certain times. You know what I mean? So
when you look at maybe that overall, I go to the just the rankings from the past week, and you look at it, and like I said, these aren't updated based on the games yesterday, but it was like before they were played. When you look at it, the SEC, even though they beat the shit out of each other all year long, they still had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They still had 8 teams ranked in the top 25, with several of those teams having at least 3 losses.
Yep. That's what I'm saying, man. It's like they were very reluctant to drop them off because they're a part of those power conferences, and they don't want somebody like a Mountain West to overtake somebody. To overtake somebody like a SEC or a Big Ten, where they know those guys are the cream of the crop, versus. So I'm starting to understand the way they do this shit now, man.
Look, when you look at the rankings, you see they have their conference. So you see the Big 12 actually in this past week's rankings, they had 5 teams ranked from the Big 12. Now they were all back from 16th, 18th, 19th, 24, and 25. But there was 5 Big 12 teams ranked in it. But you had one from the American Athletic Conference, the AAC, that was ranked, and they were ranked past 4 out of the 5 Big 12 teams, and that's Tulane. Tulane was ranked 17th. They're 9-2. If they could surpass Arizona State or Iowa State, if Tulane wins their conference, do they get an automatic bid over the Big 12 if they're ranked better than the Big 12?
That'd be fucking crazy, man.
Hey, we don't know about Tulane. I don't know if you know about Tulane. I do know this. Tulane and Georgia Tech were 2 of the original SEC teams that went out of the conference, but they were 2 of the original SEC conferences teams in the conference. Tulane, nobody's like, when you say Tulane and the Green Wave, which is what their logo or their moniker of their team is, but it's like that doesn't put fear. But Tulane in the last 5 years, they have been a very good team, and they were undefeated or came close to being undefeated within the last 5 years. We've talked about Tulane. They've been talked about in college circle over the last 5 years.
And that's probably one of the reasons that schools like a Purdue who won one game this year, and their recruiting class probably wasn't very good, and so they're probably not going to be much better next year. And it's like they don't deserve to be in the Big Ten Conference in football, but they're going to be reluctant to go anywhere else, is because they're reaping the rewards, not just by financially of being a part of the Big Ten, but they're also reaping the rewards of getting, you can't help but feel like, okay, yeah, Tulane just switched conferences and shit like that, but will Tulane be able to sustain that success in the AAC?
Probably not.
And
guess what? They had a pretty good season this year. They're sitting at 9-2. I didn't see if they won their game this past week, but let's say their quarterback put up some pretty good numbers, but he's playing at Tulane. Guess who's going to be knocking on his door? Probably a guy like Cignetti. Talking about, hey, you did pretty good there. Come to Indiana, where we already have some pretty good talent, and we'll throw you in the mix there. And that's when I talk about what Cignetti does. I could see him.
Well, let's see it. Let's see if that's what Cignetti does. I mean, this year he needs to go, and he needs to probably buy every kid that transferred from James Madison. I don't know, a watch or something. You know what I'm saying? A thank you card, whatever the hell it needs to be, dude. Because these kids already knew his system. Some of these kids were already starters at James Madison, who was good last year. They had moved up from F. Yeah, and they believed in his style, and they rolled with him, and it worked out really well for him. But he now, like I said, he's got to compete with the big boys, man. And I mean, I'm not saying. I watched a story on Cignetti the other day, and they were like, dude didn't get his first coaching gig until he was 50 years old. Like he's a late bloomer, but the kids love him. But he does have a little bit of a hard-nosed style. Like he preaches accountability. He preaches hard work and things like that. And it just, they said so far it's worked for him, man. So,
yeah. Well, and as we were just talking about Tulane, I looked up and they actually lost to Memphis this past week, which is definitely going to push them back.
Let me ask you a question real quick. What conferences got absorbed? I know there was like Conference USA or something and shit like that. What's that?
I was just yelling out like conferences like the MAC.
The MAC. Okay, so it got absorbed.
No. No, I'm not saying it got absorbed. I was just naming other like what they call mid majors.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like when all this they started doing this conference realignment and teams started going to different places. Some of these conferences went ahead and they absolved or whatever, you know what I mean? And so I'm just wondering which ones they were. I know, like I said, I know Conference USA went away.
I'll look it up. I'll tell you all the conferences. We were talking about Tulane real quick. With Tulane's loss, that was their first loss in the American Conference. And so Army is going to play Tulane in their championship game. Army, they finished 11-1. It looks like. I don't think that they played Tulane, and this is really weird. They played Tulane in the conference championship, but they still have a game against Navy. Is that not weird? They played Navy December 14th, a week after they played Tulane in the conference championship. I guess that's like the Armed Forces Bowl or something like that.
Yeah, it's called the Armed Forces Bowl. It's only played between.
I'm pulling up. These are the conferences that ESPN has ranked in. These are the conferences for Division I football, college football. They have the American athletic conference, which we just talked about, the AAC with Army leading it. You have that conference. You have the ACC. You have the Big 12. You have the Big 10. You have Conference USA, which Jacksonville State is in. Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, Sam Houston, Liberty, Louisiana. But that's Louisiana Tech, the Bulldogs. But those are some of the schools in that conference. You have the Independents. You have Mid-America Conference, which is Miami of Ohio, Buffalo, Bowling Green, those teams, Toledo's. A lot of teams from Ohio seem to be in that conference. Then you have the Mountain West.
Yep.
Then you have the Pac-12, which only had 2 teams in it this year. Then the SEC. And then the final one is the Sun Belt, which their top team is Marshall in that. They're 9-3, 7-1. That's all the conferences.
Yep. Yeah, that's like I said. There used to be a lot more, and a couple years ago they started this realignment shit where they started moving some teams here, some teams there, and several of these smaller conferences decided they were going to they were just going to be absorbed. You know, they were the teams were.
They had the Big East, and that was dissolved. That was years ago, maybe 20 years ago. That got dissolved.
I thought they still had it in basketball. I thought there was still a big. Yeah, I thought there was still a Big East conference in basketball.
Also, I had looked up. This is just you was talking about it earlier. You talked about Jerry Rice and what college he played for. I do believe that it is HBC, but it's not who you thought it was. It's Mississippi.
It's Mississippi State. Mississippi Valley State. Yeah.
Because then you're looking
somebody went to Jackson State. Maybe it was like Eddie George or Jackson State. You'd have to go to
hold on.
Jackson State. Just look at their famous alumni, man. Because somebody went there that.
Are you talking about football, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I thought that a football great went there.
Okay, here I'm gonna look at Jackson State NFL alum, I guess. I'm just wondering if they're going to give me just from like the last year. Let's see. All right. Some of the guys that have been drafted: Isaiah Bolden, James Houston, which I think James Houston was a linebacker in the NFL. Played for the. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Jameer Johnson, Leroy Fields. Let's see. These are just some guys that was drafted into the NFL.
You know what's fucking clowning, dude? I'm such an idiot, man. The person that I was referring to, I should have known. It was fucking Walter Payton, bro.
Oh, that name just came up. Yeah, I just saw that in 1975. Walter Payton was drafted from Jackson State by the Chicago Bears. Yeah, you would think that's something that you, out of all people, you know what I'm saying, with being your guy.
I mean, I knew there was an NFL great to come out of there, but man, that's been a lot of years ago. You know what I mean? Like Walter Payton's career barely cracked into my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was 1975 was when he got picked there. I was running down just to see if there was any other like big time NFL names that team out of them. None of them. Leroy Fields, which was a Denver Bronco receiver, Eric Chandler, defensive end from the Cleveland Browns, but nobody that really like sticks out. Like if you had to say who's the biggest guy that ever came out of Jackson State, 100% you're going to say it was
Walter Payton.
Yeah, running back. So yeah, that's
for sure.
that's something else there. But yeah, we that's about it, man. Like I said,
This shit drives me nuts. I've been watching NFL Network all morning. Of course, it's Sunday. That's what we do. We watch sports, and so I'm watching NFL Network, and this is driving me nuts, dude. Like they have Lil Wayne on these shows acting like he really can sit and talk some real sports insight. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm like, the dude's drinking lean as he's talking to you. You know what I'm saying? So,
it's funny because Little Wayne's on there like, I watched this podcast called Worst Case Scenario, and these motherfuckers act like they can talk sports. You know what I'm saying? The only thing that's causing us is we're like, fuck you, Little Wayne.
Mhm. Right now, I'm drinking a whole lot of haterade.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's how it is. But man, that was college football, man. Like I said, it's heating up. We're gonna have some polls out today, but then Tuesday is the big playoff poll that comes out every week. By the playoff.
So yeah, maybe when we jump on, maybe we can do one on Tuesday and just talk about the latest polls and because otherwise
they come out late. They come out like 8 or 9 o'clock, so it's probably like a Wednesday thing more. But
well, I mean, but Wednesday or Thursday we usually do our picks, so it's like we could combine those or we could do two separate ones. You know what I mean, and try to maybe make our picks a little shorter. I don't know. We'll figure it out, but college football is definitely heating up, and
a few more rankings.
It's time.
You got this week's rankings, and then you're going to have the rankings after next week's championship, and then it's set. It's the playoff will be set. The 12 teams will be determined, and like I said, this week you're going to see where the teams that aren't playing in a championship where they're ranked, but based on who wins the championships. Because if there's some upsets, like we said, if there's some upsets, it's going to mess up the teams that we're already thinking are safe in it. That could, because if you have a team that like, let's say Penn State. Well, no, because I feel like all 4 of the Big Ten schools are locked into it, but like the Big 12 or the ACC, you have an upset there that pushes a team that you think might already be set up into it, like an SMU. They have 1 loss. If they lost the championship game in the ACC, would they still get an automatic spot? Like, would they still get a spot in it when you given that other spot that we thought they would have goes to the team that beat them in the conference championship? So
yeah,
I'm excited for it, man. I'm gonna sit back today. I'm gonna watch some NFL. I'm gonna watch my Jets probably get mollywopped by the Seahawks. And you've already seen your team play, so you're just sitting back, just drinking all the haterade and hoping everybody else loses.
That's it, man. My team sucks, and so I'm just sitting back going, hey. You know what I mean? Like fucking, I hate all you motherfuckers.
Yes.
So.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will see you this week, man, for more of our podcast.
Hey, when you end this live, don't leave the backstage thing yet.
Okay. Yep. All right. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and check out our other videos we put out, and we'll see you here soon. It's the worst case scenario.
Catch you on the next one.